Everybody, how is it going? It's Tuesday night. We are catching back up after a while off, and my name is Stuart Davis. I'm a flawed man of God. I'm a deacon at a small church just outside of Richmond, Virginia. Not a pastor, not a biblical scholar, haven't been to seminary. Not trying to get you to join my church or donate to any special cause. Just here to talk about Christianity for people who are interested in learning more about it, coming towards it. You're very welcome here. And people who are already Christians who want to give their 2 cents and be a part of Christian conversation. We talk about church issues. We talk about issues outside of the church, but just how things go. Me, I'm a non-denominational Christian, non-denominational Protestant. I don't subscribe to any particular doctrine or denomination. Just a man in the Word every day, trying to do a better job myself. And with me tonight, hasn't been since the first week of May, Eric ROLON.
It is good to be back.
Yes.
So good to be back.
It has been, look, it has been us trying to put together something. But family comes first.
Yep.
Obligations come first. The stream is casual, and the stream is just a side gig for what we do.
Yep.
But Eric is now settled in and ready to go. So
that I am.
How have you been, Eric?
Dude, I've been doing well. Well, I guess in terms of, mentally, spiritually, all that has been going. Bodily, I could stand to maybe lose 5 pounds around the midsection. Drank a whole lot of Powerades and energy drinks leading up to the move as we were doing a ton of packing. So I've got 10 acres that I can run around on. Maybe I'll start doing laps tomorrow morning, shave this down. But no, things have been good. It was quite a departure from the way of life that I had really become used to, because I've been living in cities now for over a decade, and I'm so used to just the very fast pace of a city life, also being able to find anything I need within pretty much a 10-minute drive from wherever I live. Now I'm out in the middle of cornfield in upstate New York, and while I'm driving a bit farther of a distance to get to a destination, I find, minus the traffic that I would have dealt with inside Chicago or Nashville or Dallas, I'm still taking about the same amount of time to get there.
Yeah.
And
it isn't as killer on the gas as you might think either.
Yeah, because I don't have to keep stopping. I can just go. The family and I, we made our move from the Richardson area up to New York, and we're in the Thousand Island area now. Really beautiful country area. In a nice, good old, God-fearing red county, and it's different. It's very, very different.
That was going to be my question. So you go from a traditionally very red state, deep red state.
Yep.
But you're in the city, and now you're moving into a traditionally blue, more progressive state, but you're way out in the sticks.
Oh yeah.
And like you said, you're in a red county.
Yeah.
How does that change the whole perspective on things? You feel like you're more around people you can relate to? We're not talking about you, Greg. I know that's
definitely. It's so interesting because for all intents and purposes, with the exception of doing audiobooks and then the odd voiceover gig here and there, maybe an on camera if I'm doing it from home on my own green screen, for all intents and purposes, I am out of the entertainment world, which is bittersweet in a lot of ways, because you know me, I have such a heart for teaching, and I have really, really been wanting to put my effort into biblical research, correcting the failings of the progressive church, and joining that culture war as one who's well-versed in a street smart sense of worldliness, as well as having a solid basis in biblical understanding and apocryphal teachings. So I probably a couple of months leading up to my wife and I deciding, okay, we're getting out of Dodge. I have been praying because I felt like I was just hitting a brick wall after brick wall after brick wall, entertainment wise. And so I said, okay, God, you know my heart, you know my intentions, you know where I want to be and what I want to be doing. So if I had to choose between entertainment or preaching and teaching your word, I'd want to do the latter. I said, so if you want that for my life, then you're going to have to make this clear as bells, and you're just going to have to rip entertainment away from me. And sure enough, he tore that clear away from me.
Well, and I know that, I mean, you and I had been talking about it, and I know I'm not your only buddy that you were talking about it with, but you know, I thought it was going to be, very positive for you, because look, I'm a country boy at heart. I live in the country, grew up in the country. If I can't see the sky or the horizon,
Y'all,
basically without keeping, if I have to move my head up at all to see the horizon or see the sky, I don't want to be around it.
right? Something's wrong.
Yeah. So, you know, I was like, look, you're gonna have an excellent time about that. You'll be around family, and you're gonna love it. So, in the chat, we've got a lot of our regulars that are new regulars. Feel like we're starting to get like cheers up in here. Like I recognize everybody who's coming through here. So Nico was first. Wild Weeb's here. Fig's back. I haven't seen you in a while, Fig. Let's see. Nernaeth is here. Alias, I don't know if I've seen you. Alias. I can't remember that. Power Kid Greg. He says, you betrayed me, Eric. You betrayed the trust I placed in you, just like my father did. Eric, did you leave and just tell Greg that you were going out to get smokes?
I did. I was, yeah.
We're out of milk.
I promised him some regular bubble gum too. I never followed through with that either. It's in the mail, buddy.
Nernaeth wants to ask Eric about the Badgers. What do they mean?
So I know of two Badgers. I know of a friend of mine who goes by Havoc on Xbox, and I keep trying to continually convince him to change his name to Havoc the Badger because I think it'd be hilarious. And also the other Badger I know of is called the Honey Badger, both the animal and the binary triggered gun. That is a AR pistol platform, and it is amazing. I hope I hit somewhere in the ballpark there.
That's fine. We can talk about guns because I think guns is going to be a little bit on the topic tonight.
It is going to be on the topic tonight.
It shouldn't be. Okay, so we have had, like I said, we've got some new regulars. Obviously, we had the show that Nick came on to and brought up some subs. Nick is actually the person. I was watching his stream. That's how I came to know Eric. I reached out to him and said, "Hey, Eric, or here's my show. This is what I'm doing. Are you interested?" He said, "Yeah." We started talking about a couple of things. Started hanging out on Xbox Live a little bit, and it's been great ever since. It's been a really nice friendship from there.
Absolutely.
So, but I've seen some success, some subscribers go up, and I'm appreciative of it. But tonight's episode is a continuation, a fifth edition of what we've been doing for a while, and that is problems at the pulpit. And it's not necessarily at the pulpit. What it is, and you guys have probably heard me talk about it before. There are Christian influencers, preachers, people out there who misrepresent the faith. It's a tale as old as time. But so much so now because of social media, everybody with some cockeyed idea of what the Bible could be in their mind is going out there presenting themselves as an expert, as somebody who knows what they're talking about. And that's not what we're here to kind of call it out. And the particular problem that we see here is when you get your politics involved with your faith. There are going to be times where political issues will pop up that will touch on issues where that Christians should feel are important. Abortion's a big one.
Oh yeah.
and there are other ones that pop up that that aren't so much. But still, we get people who are on the stage talking about weird stuff and using Christ, using God as a vehicle to push that agenda, and it's wrong.
Yep.
It's wrong, even if you agree with that political point. It's wrong. So tonight, that's what we're going to get into. And I was talking to Eric a little bit before the show started. And hang on, let me fix something with my light. I messed that up. Meant to lighten that up before I started the stream.
Oh, fancy.
There we go. Get some light in the background, so it's not so dark in here.
I like the dark look though. It's got kind of like this sense of foreboding about it, but then the beard brings, without you even talking, some levity to the whole situation.
Yeah. All right, Greg. Take it easy. I know we'll catch you around.
Take care, brother.
Good to see you in the chat. Yeah, no, I'm not into the brooding thing right now. Maybe when we get closer to Halloween, I'll bring out some candles or something like that.
Just don't dye any section of it silver.
Yeah. So, all right. So tonight, one of the things that you wanted to talk on, it's been kind of a thing we've been seeing lately, especially in the wake of the Roe v. Wade decision that was leaked, that we're going to see more. We're probably going to see more traffic on once the actual decision comes down, and in the also in the wake of the recent school shooting in Texas, and that is gun control. And that's not so much that as also the other baggage that comes with the folks who are wringing their hands about the ability to ban abortion in the United States now, or upcoming ability to ban abortion in the States coming up now. It's, well, if you're going to be pro-life, you have to be pro-life all the way through, implying that you are not pro-life in other things, but you're only pro-life to these people if you agree with what they say. So, Eric, do you have anything off the cuff that you wanted about this?
Yes. This is one that it's like when you and I will watch some of that awesome YouTube channel Woke Preacher clips, or just see somebody inside the mainstream now, whether it's coming through Elevation, Bethel, Hillsong United, where you have these preachers that have very large platforms. We're talking congregations that are there physically in these stadium-like sanctuaries that number in the thousands, let alone the sometimes hundreds of thousands that will tune into the videos that are going up on their social media feeds. And they have a supremely large reach. And what drives me crazy is that you see so many of them latch on to an ideology, not even something that's rooted inside the Bible. Now, you and I have talked about there being a number of issues inside the Bible that are also big issues in our normal, regular day-to-day. And given that politics is the nature of human interaction, if we go to the original Greek word, it's essentially all about life is what it really boils down to. Given that so many of the things that our politics have been derived from were originally issues that came up inside the Bible originally, like the idea of marriage between a man and a woman, the idea of sanctity of life inside Leviticus 18, not passing your child through the fire in offerings to Molech. There are a lot of issues that the church has and absolutely should say something about. There are a lot of areas that they do have absolute 100% credence to speak to that they don't speak about. Now, whether it's them feeling that the offering bucket's going to be lean that week, or they're going to get canceled by the other ne'er-do-wells out there, I can't say, because I don't know what their board is doing in the background. But what I do know is there has been way more political discussion from the pulpit on issues that are seemingly outside the realm of those few issues that the Bible actually does speak to directly. And you see way too many preachers that are getting into the ideas of BLM or Antifa or talking about gun control, and then trying to, through some sort of linguistic gymnastics, draw lines back to the Word of God to give them a bulwark to lean up against to help make their points. And that is what I have a really, really hard time with, because let's face it, in this book, I can twist it to say whatever I want it to say. However, as the Bereans in Acts 17:11 did, they didn't simply just take what they heard on face value. They did their own due diligence, and they searched the scriptures daily to see if what they heard was true. It doesn't mean that I just stay within one passage. I mean, that means that I've got to take that passage in context, but also if there's a reference there to something that happened either before or after, I need to search through the entirety of this tome to piece together the answers in as cohesive a manner as I possibly can. So this week, in the wake of yet another really terrible mass shooting, mass killing at the hands of a psychopath in Texas, you have a number of not just political leaders coming out and railing against gun manufacturers, railing against Second Amendment rights, and touting this need for gun control. Will they give you the specifics on that? No, unless it's inside a bill that gets read briefly, which typically has another 1,200 pages behind it of fluff with all these other stipulations that just strip rights away from people. It's political activism, playing with people's lives, and not actually done for the intended betterment of a society. Well, that's fine for the politicians to do because that's their game. The majority of them are muckrakers anyway, and they're designed to spin and spin and spin. Well, this past week, I saw preacher after preacher after preacher with these huge platforms, people that are looking up to and following them. And they are on their platforms denigrating fellow Christians for their cleaving to Second Amendment rights. And they were doing so by lumping all essentially gun or weapon owning Christians into the same category and claiming, oh, you guys have all this fervor and fight inside of you for protecting your rights to keep and bear arms and protect your families and your cities around you. But where's the same fervor when it comes to protecting these little children who are getting killed in these mass shootings? Because if you want to protect these little children, if your heart is really there for the weak and for the insufficient, and you don't support gun control activism, then you're not doing it right and you're in the wrong. And their basis for doing so always pulls at this emotional issue where they'll almost always lean on what Jesus said, where it's like, oh, should any of you cause one of these little ones to stumble, then it would be better that a millstone's tied about your neck and you're cast into the sea. But whenever it comes to actually giving some solid biblical foundation for what it is that they're spouting, there is nothing beyond that verse. And more often than not, they end up completely alienating, I would say probably 80% of their collective flock at any of these church organizations by making them out to be essentially these demonized individuals because they care about their rights to protect themselves, their families, and their posterities. And these preachers won't even allow the argument of, oh, I understand that you want to protect yourself and your family and have a means to take care of business should your house be set upon by a violent mob or a home invader or a psycho ex with a knife. But that's as far as it goes. There's no understanding beyond that for them to say, I get that you want to do that, but is there maybe some middle ground that we can reach where maybe you can lean on this decision gun control wise, or maybe lean on this one, right, all in an effort to hopefully save more children or make our communities even safer by just limiting the amount of firepower we have. There's never that discussion. It is always, you are wrong, you are evil, and you don't belong to our church if you have this mindset.
And that's the big problem right there. The fact that, look, if you want to have that opinion. I think you're wrong, but that's your opinion. That's a discussion that needs to be played out in the outside of church, in the political arena. We're not living under a dictatorship. We're not living under a kingdom. We are a constitutional republic. We are part of the government. The expectation is that we participate. So that's where you put your opinions on things, and we've got this long road down here. This long list of rules in the Constitution of what the expectations are supposed to be in our. That's all separate of the pulpit, and the problem is what you get in. And I'll go further. I can see where when you were talking about alienating 80%, I think in a lot of these places, the pastor is preaching to like-minded individuals. If you go up, especially in northern cities, you will find people who probably wouldn't that most of us, people that I can relate to and have a great conversation with on almost any issue. But you put a gun on the table and say, "Hey, let's go do some target practice," and they are immediately nervous. And it's not against them. I grew up out, like I said, out in the country where guns are much more out there, and many of us go out and shoot and learn gun safety and gun handling at a young age. They haven't had that exposure, and I mean, if you picking up a weapon, especially for the first time, it's a firearm has weight to it, and you can just feel it in there, and that's good. It's good to be respectful of the power that has. I've talked about things. I've compared things to riding a motorcycle, where you can have fun with a motorcycle, but you got to respect what it can do to you. Yep. Same thing with a firearm. You just have to respect it. Take some time to handle it. But a lot of people are nervous about it, and they see this stuff happen on television, and they think, why can't we get it? Because they don't have that around their house. They don't understand why other people feel like they should have the need. It doesn't matter at that point. Now I'm drifting outside of biblical teachings here. I'm stepping outside of the faith. This is my personal opinion, and it's supported by the Constitution. But that Second Amendment is there for a reason. It's there for a reason. Been that way for a long time. It's not a new idea that a population is armed, and that's why we should have that. That's why we have that right. However, I don't want to see my pastor at my church talking about how great the Second Amendment is in this context. It's not the right place. It's not. I mean, even though I agree, this is not a biblical issue. This is not a biblical issue. Now, if we want to talk about stuff like Nehemiah and carrying swords around and the Israelites and Joshua and all, I mean, there's plenty of warfare in there. There's plenty of examples of people being armed in the Bible. But that's not it's not a core issue. That's an issue for our specific government that we are existing in outside of the faith, right? So that's where you put that stuff away. But some people cannot keep their mouth shut when they should. And pastors, some of them are oftentimes weirdos in these cases, and they're preaching at weird churches. So funny, we should talk about how that happens. You were talking about woke preacher clips on Twitter. Yep. I think I've got their link in the description, guys. If you want to go out, if you're on Twitter, check them out. You'll see all sorts of wild stuff. Or maybe don't check them out because it's going to upset you.
Yeah, oh man. It's what's really been killing me, not being able to be a part of the Tuesday night stream and not being able to just get my own content out there more regularly. It's literally this crap that has been driving me so crazy because it has to be combated. And this is our area, as Paul even dignifies, this is our area in which we should be pushing back against the unsound and outright fallacious rhetoric that is coming from these people that claim to be men of the cloth or claim to be Christ followers. And you're absolutely right there, Mitch, that there is a reason that a fellowship is better than a church, because you actually get into the word instead of just taking at face value what you hear from the pulpit. You're then empowered to do some further digging. And when you were mentioning just a second ago about how, this is a political issue. This shouldn't be a church issue. If we want to make it a church issue and actually make this a biblical issue, well, then I can very easily go right to Matthew 5:9, where Jesus flat out says, hey, when he's given the Beatitudes, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Well, peacemakers, in order to make peace, had to go out and give themselves over to war, to beat back and beat down and obliterate the threat that was otherwise causing terror, panic, and genocide amongst their ranks and amongst their civilians' lives. Those are who made peace. Because in a time of war, the person who's going to make peace is not the one making a daisy chain necklace and wearing a head full of flowers in a tambourine circle. It's going to be the one that steps up, puts that rifle to their shoulder, and fires back for the person who wants to have their daisy chain tambourine circle.
Yeah. All right, so let's go through a couple of chats here. Pull it down. Dresden has entered the chat as well. Hello, Dresden. Mitch the Ripper, you mentioned him. Oh, by the way, Mitch, I was trying to reach out to you earlier. What time on your show Friday night? I need to find out when you're interested in bringing me and Eric on, so I can see if it'll work for me.
Please.
I've got family stuff that goes on Fridays, but after normally around 8:30, 9 o'clock, I'm Eastern time. I'm free, but just let me know. That said. Nerneath game it. What? Didn't you know the Bible endorsed Honda in a carpooling when the apostles were all in one accord?
Oh my gosh.
Dad jokes. It's so good. They're so good. It's the spice of life.
Thank you for that.
Fig putting preacher in quotation marks. Amen. Nico, it's so weird that now it is, quote, it is controversial to support the Constitution of your own country. It is amazing. And that's really not something very too terribly new. This gun control debate has been going on for a long time, a long time, and I don't understand why. But luckily, we haven't had too much movement on it. Personally speaking, for myself, but yeah. Nerneath said Jesus didn't stop teaching the word just because some people were teaching it. Some people were teaching it wrong. He did the thing correctly to show those who were doing it incorrectly and to be an example. Amen.
Absolutely.
Mitch says, bear in mind that the Second Amendment is also the only one that specifies a free state. Wild Weeb says, arm the schools. Nerneath, Jesus also told his disciples to take a sword or two. So we got some base guys in here, people who've been reading their Bible and they understand. 10 p.m. Eastern, Mitch, I'm there. If it's at 10 Eastern, I'm there.
Let's do it.
All right. All right. So Mitch said there's a reason that a fellowship is better than a church. I know you were talking, and that was what you were talking about. Yep. This is why I'm a big proponent of small churches.
Yes.
Small and why I love being non-denominational, as opposed to being part of a larger group. You said there's pros and cons for both sides. And I respect people who are part of the other ones, but this is one of the reasons when I see this stuff go on. If this happened at my church, preacher be out of job probably minutes after after he finished. And we were trying to call all the congregants who left and walked out during the thing. We don't have to worry about petitioning a larger group to say, look, hey, we don't want this guy around no more. No, we just get rid of him.
Yeah. And what really sucks about a lot of mega churches that do give themselves over to this intellectual frivolity is that most of them started out small and their intent was, we are here to serve the Lord and we are here to present his gospel as authentically as we possibly can. But oftentimes you have whoever is in charge, whether it be those on the board, their deacon of elders, or the pastor himself, as was the case in the church that I went, where the pastor just circumvented all the deacons. Whether it's him or the deacons, typically there is someone in those ranks that, whether it's because of money coming in regularly from faithful tithers, and they are thinking more of turning the church into a business, or it's in an effort to try and appease the numerous new people that are coming into the fold, I'm not sure. But if I had to make a wild guess, I would say oftentimes the downfall is when that mega church that now has so many members loses sight of their original focus, which was to serve God and present the hard, unbending, unyielding truth of the Word of God, and they substitute it by trying to appease man and all of our feelings and bend to the social temperature and somehow try and massage the word to go along with that. That's what I think. If I had to make a guess, that's where I'd say most mega churches go wrong. They get more concerned about pleasing the flock than pleasing God.
Yeah. Yeah, let me, and let's go play, because I think there are some people who are true believers, and I'm not saying true believers in Christ, I'm saying true believers in their weird ideology.
Yeah,
I'm
right.
gonna start with this. Let me go plug in my headphones real quick.
Stole it.
Spare me. I got dad shorts on, guys.
That's all right. I'll keep it alive. It's like we have to start gatekeeping these types of people out. You know what? You're onto something there, Fig. Both Jesus and Paul gave us a model for what needs to take place when a brother or sister is in error within the church. And both of them gave us this same model. First, you're supposed to go to the person one-on-one if you recognize the grievance. And being that within the church, we are called to hold each other accountable. You know, everybody likes to quote that thing, judge not lest you be judged. Well, you're also told, hey, remove the log from your own eye before you pull the speck out of a brother's. And that's all well and fine. However, the judge not lest you be judged goes on to say, when you judge, or when Jesus says, when I judge with righteous judgment. And we are called to hold each other accountable, meaning that if you're not in breach of the same exact act that somebody who is a fellow brother or sister in Christ is in breach of, then it is incumbent on you to reach out to them and say, hey, this is where I see your foot slipping. Let's step back on the path here, because you're not in error. So your judgment that you're using to go to them with is absolutely 100% justified. But you go one-on-one. If it's not heated, you go with one or two others and say, essentially, your little like intervention moment. Hey, we see these things going on here. Just so you know, we're not the only ones who see it. Let's make a change. If it's still not heated, then you go before the elders and the deacons. If it's still not heated, then you go before the whole church and you excommunicate that person. You say, look, we gave them umpteen number of chances to straighten that step out, and now we have to cut ties. And in that way, you are actually loving your church body well, because you're being bold enough to stand on principles that are within the good book. And even though it's hard and painful to do, it is a necessary thing that keeps the rest of your flock from becoming poisoned. So absolutely, there is a gatekeeping that needs to take place. And way too many churches are so lenient on letting people remain within their working ranks that do nothing but sow seeds of discord and discontent, pervert the gospel, and cause others to fall away. And that needs to be corrected.
Yeah. Can you hear me, by the way? Because I plugged in.
A little bit.
What about now?
Yeah, now we're talking.
Okay. So I got to wear the goofy headphones right now.
It's all right. It's just like we're playing games, man.
Exactly, right when we're on Discord. All right, so I'm going to play this.
All right, here we go.
All right, here we go. Let me see. All right. So I love this. He comes in, woke preacher clips it. Love to head to church on Sunday and hear a lecture on the racist theory of the Second Amendment and the filibuster. So I don't think we're gonna do it through all 2 minutes of this, but we'll get the gist of it.
Highlights.
In her book Loaded, A Disarming History of the Second Amendment, scholar Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz states, any assessment of gun violence and the Second Amendment in the United States is incomplete without dealing with what guns were for and what that means about their popularity and proliferation today. It's the elephant in the room in all of our debates about guns. that language in the Second Amendment about militias. Militias, what were militias? Militias were originally invented to invade and occupy native land. And the language of the Second Amendment gave people the constitutional right to form volunteer militias with guns to attack indigenous people and take their land. It also gave slaveholders the ability to create armed slave patrols who would go out and capture runaways. Militias had long existed in the colonies when the Second Amendment was written, and the drafters of the Constitution expected them to continue fulfilling two primary roles: destroying native communities in the armed march to possess the continent and take power over the entire continent, and brutally subjugating the African population.
Okay, so we're just going to stop it right there because we're about a minute in. So obviously, this guy is used to talking about things that he doesn't know what he's what's going on.
And clearly getting all his facts from Wikipedia or from Vice Media.
Yeah, he's getting this stuff from whatever Sean White, Talcum X, because this is a problem, right? First off, historically, he's absolutely incorrect. There's no factual basis in what he's talking about, which is probably right, because it's probably look, listening to him, a little bit of affect there. Maybe he shouldn't be a pastor either for other reasons, but he clearly doesn't know what he's talking about from a biblical sense either.
Nope.
So, I mean, this is a guy preaching in front of people who are probably looking to him, because people naturally look up to their pastor. You look to your pastor as a guy you think he's done his research. You think that he has, he's speaking from a point of authority where he's knowledgeable what he's talking about, but it only takes a half-educated person 2 seconds into this to find out this guy's way off the rails. This guy's got an agenda.
Yeah, he conflated guerrilla army with militia. And if you want to go out to the actual history of it, militias here, historically in the U.S., were a conscription of civilian soldiers working under the employ of the government during times of extreme need to fight back against threats, domestic and foreign. They were not designed to go and occupy foreign territory. That's what guerrilla armies do.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is out there, people. I mean, we saw it, and like I said, it tried to get, but when the Jeremiah Wright thing happened back in 2007, I guess, 2008, before the election, I mean, you saw somebody preaching weird politics from a pulpit that thousands of people went to. And these aren't like mega churches like we're thinking with Hillsong and Elevation. These are just massive churches because they're in the middle of a city and a lot of people go there. And the community looks at these people. A lot of these pastors are into the community. They understand, I guess, that part of their job, or they know that that's the best way to be good at their job, the way they see it. They're out in the community. People know them, and people think of them as good people. And they hear this, and they're like, "Wow, is that really what happened? Oh, I guess we need to be against it." So they're perpetuating something. You want to do that? Do that on your own time. Don't do it from a pulpit. Don't do it as a representative of faith at all. You're not speaking from authority on this, and you might just be. He might know that he's lying about all this. Maybe he gets his talking points from someplace, but he might just be intentionally deceptive because he thinks it's worth it to tell a lie to push this agenda that he thinks is righteous, or he's just an ass. So
it sucks that you see this Second Amendment issue being spoken of by members of the church in a way that is completely contrary to what the Bible actually has said about not only arming yourself for the time of war, but as a husband, there is a huge onus on you that if you do not, number one, work to provide for your house, and if you don't do well to teach your house and protect your house, you are no better than a Samaritan, which, if you want to put it into modern day talk with a little bit of a Harry Potter-esque twist, we call them, you're no better than a mudblood or a muggle. It and that comes from 1 Corinthians 7. That comes like actually from the epistles. Like that's Paul, the guy who was bar none the most devout Jew that ever lived. And he's going, hey guys, yeah, you don't provide, you don't do what is demanded of you. Yeah, no, you're a mess.
Yeah.
And there's a litany of other areas within the Bible, even within the Gospels, where Jesus is preaching and teaching that you see so much support for not wanton violence, but you see support for violence and a show of force when necessary. And it's inside the New Testament, it's all reactionary for somebody coming against you. Inside the Old Testament, during a conquest period where we hit going from Judges, Joshua, and then into Kings, we see that being during an age of conquest where God says, hey, I want you to cut down every man, woman, and child of these Canaanite tribes. We have two very different frames of reference for there. But like somebody else in the chat said, with regards to carrying a sword, if you go right to Luke 22, and I'm just going to read this small chunk here because I feel it's all relevant, but this is talking about scripture must be fulfilled in Jesus because he came that the prophecies may be filled. And so he did. He carried them all out. And this is him talking to his disciples. He says, and he said to them, when I sent you out with no money bag or knapsack or sandals, did you lack anything? They said nothing. He said to them, but now let the one who has a money bag take it, and likewise a knapsack, and let the one who has no sword sell his cloak and buy one. For I tell you that this scripture must be fulfilled in me. And he was numbered with the transgressors. For what is written about me has its fulfillment. And they said, look, Lord, here are 2 swords. And he said to them, it is enough. There is so much support within the Bible for self-defense, and not just self-defense for your own body, but for your house. And when the Bible refers to house, it is referring to if you were a person with servants and or slaves, it was literally everybody within your immediate care and control that you had a duty to protect. We have also here inside Luke 11:22, when it's talking about a house divided, just starting at verse 21. And this is Jesus pretty much drawing a line in the sand to say, hey, look, you're either with me or against me. But he says, look, when a strong man, fully armed, guards his house, his possessions are secure. But when someone stronger attacks and overpowers him, he takes away the armor in which the man trusted, and then he divides up his plunder. He who is not with me is against me, and he who does not gather with me scatters. Now, I'm not going to try and spin it and say, oh, yeah, that's clearly Jesus saying, hey, you ought to be, a hard ass and protect your house, because that's not what the context dictates here. But why would he need to call out to an analogy of a strong man, were it not for the fact that a lot of times inside Jerusalem and inside Israel as a whole nation, and this is during that age of conquest, after they were pretty much broken, their walls were shattered, and they were taken away to other parts of the world in chains. And this is when we're getting into like Isaiah and Jeremiah and the book of Daniel. Why is it then that, as you mentioned in Nehemiah, when Nehemiah is charged with building that wall back up, he is told, hey, you better be bricking and mortaring with a trowel in one hand and a sword in the other hand, because these people knew that, look, if we don't have walls, we are very easily set upon. So much like the founders stipulated when it came to them putting regulation in that said, hey, officials who or keepers of the peace are not allowed to just enter your house without a warrant and seize your property. They also made it very clear that everybody understood, okay, should somebody come into your house to steal, rape, and pillage, and you haven't armed yourself properly to be able to handle that threat, and they come in, steal, rape, and pillage, then it is your fault because you were not prepared. That's what you can gather from this here. Because the man who was strong, fully armed, and guarded his house would have had to do so because there were no walls.
And Isaiah, you brought up Isaiah. Isaiah's a great one because he's a prophet, right? That's considered one of the books of prophecy.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't he say sometimes there's a time for peace and a time for war?
Yep.
A time to kill.
And a
Yes, they
time to-
deserve to die, and I hope they burn in hell.
Yep. A time for everything under heaven. Even
Yep.
Solomon goes in Song of Solomon, in Ecclesiastes, he goes as far as to say virtually the same thing. Look, there is a time for everything under heaven. It's beyond unconscionable that you see this happening, but this leads to another thing that I wanted to talk about. And I'd love for our next conversation to be more in this vein, because I've done a lot of research into this. But it shouldn't come as a surprise that you see this sort of grand apostasy really being pressed through the ranks within the church and coming from more mainstream preachers, kind of in a top-down fashion. It's partially why I have a very hard time attending a church that is involved with World Mandate. Francis Chan's really involved with that, and a lot of bigger other mega church corporations are involved with that. And it's kind of like, hey, here's your orders from the top down.
Right.
Here's almost like your curriculum for the year to now take to your church. And within the church presently, and this is nothing new, just like in any organization, if you take, say, if you think of like the CIA, the FBI, and then we'll say just
The
our
Jesuits?
military, the Jesuits, sure.
The Jesuits?
We'll get into the Blackwater militia as well. But in any type of cohesive unit that is designed to be an intelligence agency and or military, you inevitably have those that will infiltrate. They'll infiltrate, whether it is to gather information, or if it's to try and plan a coup of sorts, or if it's trying to bend people one way or another. There is an infiltration that will happen, which is why when you get into like the original Wind Talkers, where they would use Navajo and Indian codes to disguise what they were saying, because they were worried that somebody might be listening in that was possibly in the next office over. But there's an understanding that does happen.
All right, hold on. Let me stop you right there, because I want to go into this further, but I also want to catch up with the chat a little bit.
Yes,
because it started as soon as I started playing that clip, they started getting active. Yeah. Wild Weeb said, "Guy's definition of militia 100% wrong." Correct. We need more masculine, God-fearing warriors. Clear, we didn't have one of those there. Mitch says, "Okay, this guy's a putz," and that's hold on. This guy's a putz, and that's on a good day. Your Nate said he looks like a manlet. The only way people look at him is on his platform. Maybe that's where he's compensating. Now putz is an insult I haven't heard for centuries. The dude will be SOL when the sanitary napkin shortage hits really hard. Fig, yes, that was the pastor who said GD America. That was Reverend Wright, yes. He's Nornath. He's a moist manlet. He could stand up to any, or he couldn't stand up to anything, I think is what he said. Weeb says he's a pastor. He should know that lying to hurt and deceive others, which is exactly what he's doing, is a sin. He knows exactly. He knows he has influence. He's swaying it in a place without without any type of biblical reference. It's purely to push things in his direction, not God's. John Smoth, this guy doesn't look or sound like a guy who studies scripture to find truth, rather a guy who searches scripture to back up his pagan positions. Yes. And I think that'll tie into what you're getting into.
Yep. Very much so.
Wild Weed, but his agenda is more important than obeying God's holy book. That is much more obvious. It's obvious to us watching this. That's the thing. It isn't obvious to people who have been listening to him for a long time and who go into it sharing some of his political beliefs, and then you just start talking about that. You smooth it into this. Happens in red states too. There was a lot. I voted for Trump, but there was a lot of people preaching about Trump as if he was something
second
more
coming.
Something more than just a politician that we agreed with in many respects. It's like, no, I don't think Donald Trump should be discussed in any reason, pro or against, at the pulpit. We can talk about issues that he supports that we might agree with or disagree with, but you don't name that name. You talk about an issue that has has specific biblical instruction on it, and you talk about this is what we should support as Christians as it comes up in our voting things and what we should support. But you've got to walk that middle area. You've got to walk down that road, because that's what God wants you to. All this other stuff, it's all smoke and mirrors. It's all us with opinions, and we're all and everybody's got one, right? But the pastor has the responsibility to not let that happen in his sermons. And some of them just like, that's my motivation. That's exactly where I want to go with it. They go straight there. And I think that's a disservice. I think that's to me, that's it's disqualifying as a thing. All right, finish these up. But his agenda is more important. I read that. Fig said, gross Harry Potter references are cringe. Nehemiah should have built the wall and made the Horonites pay for it, but he did all right. So when I was teaching Sunday school, when we got to Nehemiah, I go, oh yeah, build that wall, president, or build that wall, biblical account. I love Nehemiah. Those who build are always set upon by those who would pillage and destroy. And again, I think that also is tying into what you're getting ready to get into. Yep. In Fig, either Trump was preached as the second coming or the Antichrist. Yeah, either way, it didn't. Yep. It just didn't belong here. Oh, by the way, guys, put it in the chat. Does my mic sound better than my traditional mic?
Yes.
I always get a tinny. I always feel like I got a tinny sound with my mic, with my traditional mic, and
it actually does sound really well. Because it doesn't change in quality or tone when you back away from it. Like sometimes when you relax in, it sounds good.
I can lean back. I can lean back as far as I've got. As far
as you got cord.
All right, so we're talking about infiltrators. Sorry, Eric. I just wanted to get those chats before we went through any further.
Yeah. And one last thing, and I'll jump back on to the other train there. But you touched on something really, really pertinent there, and that is that you're looking at these people that are teachers. And that was why I stressed before that you typically see these larger progressive churches with these huge flocks. And you have this person up there on the pulpit that is saying something, knowing full well the influence that they wield as that teacher. And it's why the Bible and God place such a heavy burden of responsibility on those who would call themselves teachers and or preachers. Because I have a very sneaking suspicion that Jesus wasn't just alluding to physically small children when he said, should you cause one of these little ones to stumble? It's better if you were dead. Being that we're all children of God, I have a feeling that when it comes to somebody who's literally giving false theology, bearing that false witness, and literally having it be against thy neighbor, there's definitely hell to pay, whether in this life or the next. Now we know that once saved, the Creator himself cannot pluck you from his hand. However, they may not inherit the otherwise kingdom of God like they may have been. Those gifts may be stripped away from them. But to the topic of apostasy and the topic of infiltration within the church, the book of Jude, one chapter little book, but it is full of so many trails that you can hunt down through the Bible. And it's sort of the precursor to what takes place inside the book of Revelation, the end times, then eventually the apocalypse, the second coming, and then the triumphal defeat of the Antichrist and his minions. Well, I encourage people to take a very serious look at the book of Jude, because we get into some really, really interesting territory inside there. We hear reference to the angels who originally sinned, disrobing of their immortal bodies to engage in copulation with human females. We learn about the men of renown. It's referenced to inside Jude, but you have to go back to Genesis 6 to really get a sense of that. Well, within the book of Jude, it gets very heavily into the apostasy that will grip the church and will be propagated from the pulpit. Jesus talked about it. Jesus talked, he said, be careful, little children, that no one deceive you. When I'm gone, many will come to you saying, oh, look, we've seen him there. There he is, or I am he. Do not believe any of them. Well, the apostasy goes even further when you have people that as Paul put it, don't worship the creator who is blessed forever, amen, but instead worship the created, the creeping, the crawling, the insignificant things. Well, there is or I should say there was a minister. His name was Russ Dizdar. He passed away, I believe it was this last year, him and his wife about 4 weeks apart from COVID. Really sucks because he was young. I think he was maybe in his either late 50s or early 60s. But he spent the better part of 3 decades working in the in the occult and satanic ritual abuse crime division, with a number of different police precincts. He was there. He was pretty much the head of the occult crime division, and he would teach the officers there what signs you're looking for when you go into certain situations where you learn of human trafficking. Russ Dizdar, I think it's Dizdarr, I believe. It might just be one R though. So let me just flip my light off. Oh well, it's fine. But
Getting spooky
anyway,
now.
yeah, I know. Now we're getting into it. So
Yeah,
anyway,
the Jesuits are here to get you.
oh shoot, hold on. Oh, I don't hear a siren going off. But anyway, Russ, he was very, very well studied in the Bible as a whole. He was a minister, but he would give information to the cops to let them know, hey, if you're entering this kind of a scene and you have a suspicion that certain kind of ritual abuse may have taken place, you're looking for these symbols on the wall, you're looking for this type of chalice to have been used, you're looking for these specific things. Well, throughout the entire course of his work that he did there, he dealt with a lot of people that were either demonically oppressed or possessed. He did probably several thousand deliverances and exorcisms, if you will. Well, a lot of the information that he got was from first sources. So he was reading like Anton LaVey. He was reading books that are coming from the Church of the Black Goat. He was reading the actual satanic Bible, the Satanist Bible, reading through their actual material and reading what their actual plans are, what their intents are. And he spoke a lot about this coming event that he called the Black Awakening. And it's what the Church of the Black Goat and the Luciferian churches and essentially the occult leaders have talked about putting into play, but they've been doing so in this kind of frog in a kettle approach. And they've been doing so in our churches since I'd say about the 60s leading up till now. And what their mission largely boils down to is, as we know, by the time the apocalypse kicks off, everything is going to have gone to hell in a handbasket here in the world. We know that things, given that we have entropy laws, are going to go from bad to worse and worser. And part of what this Black Awakening is that they have people that will purposely infiltrate a church and will start to break that church down from the inside out. It may be somebody that they first come to the church and they're just like a normal average Joe. They're there, praise and worship on Sunday. They're giving to the offering plate. And then they work their way into an actual serving position. It may be a paid or an unpaid position, but they work their way slowly into a position of pertinence and esteem within that church body. And you have people that there's so much that goes into the training that these infiltrators undertake to then go into these churches and start breaking them down. But if you look between the 90s to now, back in the 90s, the fastest growing subculture and way of life for teenage kids, specifically white male teenagers in the US, was Wiccanism. That was the fastest growing group back in the 90s. And now one of the fastest growing groups is actually on the other side is now Wicca for women. There are, according to numbers recently, there are around, I want to say it's 54,000 covens across our US. And a lot of them are directly involved with the Luciferians, the Church of the Black Goat, those who followed Anton LaVey's teachings. And part of that mission, which is all hell driven, is to infiltrate break down the church, and cause these men and women who are in positions of teaching prominence to fall. Because in so doing, it destroys the witness for Christ. It makes a huge majority of the congregation step back and go, oh my gosh, we put all our eggs into the basket of following this person's teaching. God doesn't exist. Otherwise, he wouldn't allow this to happen. There's no way I can continue to believe in the Bible because I'm seeing this. And what really, really sucks is a lot of these people who do infiltrate the church, they know the Bible better than anybody on the board of elders, than the pastor himself, than those who are there teaching it, because they have been putting their nose to the grind specifically for an infiltration type mission that they're carrying out. And I can just about guarantee you that a lot of the preachers that you see on woke preacher clips are there by design, and it's not God's design that they're there. They're there specifically to supplant the actual gospel with a new apostasy that they're going to put forward. And that apostasy is going to be all about humanism. It is going to shift into transhumanism and the not just tolerance of, but the acceptance of and the proliferation of that transhumanism. And they will end up working Eastern mysticism and demonic practices into the church itself. We've seen it happen in so many churches where they have things like holy yoga. Instead of tarot card decks, they have angel card decks. People are encouraged to get into what we've talked about before, which is lectio divina, or to get into essentially emptying your mind completely of all thoughts and doing as the Jains and the Buddhists would, and that is trying to focus on the singularity of the mind itself. And typically it culminates in what's called a spiritual formation exercise that, yes, is taught in Bethel's version of witchcraft and wizardry, which is a school for manifestations of the Holy Spirit that they actually have, where people are trained how to essentially perform miracles and such. The spiritual formation exercise is actually designed to lower your internal defenses, because if we look to the original witches that were back inside the Bible, we can refer right back to 2 Kings, I think, First Samuel 29, where Paul, or it's either 28 or 29, where Paul goes to visit the witch of Endor. Now, originally back then, the word sorcerer stemmed from the word pharmakeia, which is where we get our modern day word pharmacist. And it had to do specifically with illicit drugs, ones that alter the state of the mind to open up your spiritual doors. Now, we have within our brains this thing called the pineal gland. And a lot of people believe that that's where your thoughts come from. They believe that maybe that's where God speaks to your heart and mind from. Well, I'm not really quite sure on that, but we do know that there is a lot of heavy activity there, and that is something that is really centered upon when you're dealing with Reiki and chakra-like healing, and even in Kundalini yoga. It's very much focused on opening that third eye. Well, just like a sword can be used for great good, it can also be used for great evil. So if that is the case there, then it could stand to reason that God could use that for wonders and Satan could use it for evil. Well, the idea behind getting into something like Kundalini yoga is to, through meditation, do what a drug forces your brain into doing. And that's to open that third eye specifically for the allowance of demonic attachment, demonic possession, and demonic oppression. So many people at these progressive churches, and I hate that this is the way it is, but so many people at these progressive churches that come out of there after somebody finally points them to an actual Bible and says, here's where everything that the preacher has said from the pulpit is completely incorrect, and I'll show you all the references. When those people come out, there are so many of them that have to undergo demonic deliverances because they're either possessed or they're being oppressed by an evil spirit or entity. And this goes as far as to the old hag syndrome, or the sleep paralysis, as people like to term it. People having their minds just be tortured. People having their personalities fractured, kind of like that movie Get Out, where it's like the real them gets tucked back into this hidden place in the brain, and something else comes forward and puppets them while they're unaware. A lot of people report losing long chunks of time. A lot of people who are their friends will report, yes, they've got this personality one day and then they act this way the next way. That is what you see starting to happen here. But it's been going on for decades and decades and decades. And Russ Dizdar, he was on the forefront of trying to expose all of that. His website is called Shatter the Darkness. And he still has, I believe, all his courses up there, like Satanism 101, the Black Awakening specifically, Satanic Super Soldiers and such. And I know a lot of this sounds like it's completely out there, because it is. And he uses biblical backing for everything that he talks about. But this was a guy that was a part of people that would infiltrate into the Masonic temples and the lodges and actually get down into, what do these people believe and what is their mission for the world? And it all stems back to the warnings we get from the J-Man himself and from the book of Jude that talk about this grand apostasy that will cause so many to fall away. And if Proverbs is any indication as to how important it is to study our word, we're told that the simple die for lack of sense. And these people that sit in these churches listening to these crazy pastors that are giving them these political talking points that are born of leftist ideology and buffoonery have done an incredible disservice to themselves by not staying in their word as they should and soaking it up like they need to be.
Yeah, and if you really, we're dealing with it more on a new, it's more recent for us within the Protestant group, which you would think wouldn't be something we would be slow on the uptick on, but we have been. But if you want to talk to people who have been fighting this fight for a while, you can look. There's a lot of groups within Catholicism that are doing this, and especially since Vatican II, which is decades ago. Vatican II did a lot of things that that traditional Catholics were shaking their heads, and they really have never recovered for it. But that plan for Vatican II apparently had gone in motion for a long time now. So, and I'm not Catholic. I've got Catholic friends. I love my brothers in Christ, even though I disagree with them on some of their doctrine. However, one of them turned me on to a book called Infiltration by, hang on, let me pull it up real quick, by Dr. Taylor Marshall. All right. He is very Catholic. And if you read this book, I highly recommend it. He is very Catholic. He does have a chip on his shoulder about Protestants, but he gives a very good accounting for the difficulties and the struggles that traditional Catholics have had with the Vatican being infiltrated with atheists, Masons, all sorts of ne'er-do-wells, and there to do exactly what he said, what Eric's talking about. It's much easier, and that's one of the good things when you have a large structure like the Vatican, like Roman Catholics do, is that you're going to find a lot more people studying it, and it's going to be a lot bigger expose. So if you want to know more about how this stuff happens, that book is a great expose on it. And I highly recommend it. Like I said, it's Dr. Taylor Marshall, and it's book's called Infiltration. It's not a long book by any means. I think it's a 6 to 8 hour audio book. That's how I read now because I'm lazy and I've got a million things to do. I like to listen to my books, but that's a day's worth of listening. So, but that's where you put that. And I just saw John Smoth, Eastern Orthodox are good at this too. The Eastern Orthodox, to their credit, and like I said, I got a lot of respect for them. They have done a better job than anybody else keeping those modernists out. And if you go back to my interview with Thaddeus Patrick, who gave a really good interview with me on Eastern Orthodoxy, he did a really good job talking about, hey, we still have our problems too. But they seem to have done a better job there. I mean, it's the Orthodoxy, right? So everything has to do about holding on to that stricture, where the Catholics have been played it probably a little too fast and loose within their within their hierarchy. And this has happened. So Nernaeth said, how do you think you can warn people about this without sounding nutty? Well, I start these things off with you have to start with the premise of, do you believe in the supernatural? If you believe in
Mhm.
God, you believe in the supernatural. He is supernatural in essence. And there are biblical accounts that demons exist, that this stuff, you don't even have to go through. I mean, Jude isn't saying anything revolutionary here. You go back in the Old Testament. Spoiler alert, after Solomon, Israel doesn't have a good king for the rest of their time in the Old Testament until the Romans come. They are does evil in the sight of the Lord.
Yeah.
Judah.
Well, they have little pockets of them, but they don't last
no,
very long.
They don't, but those are in Judah. Israel, after Solomon, Israel's
Oh,
all
it
evil.
is true. Yeah,
Israel's all
you're
evil.
correct there.
Judah has a handful of guys who
Yep.
do well. But I mean, that's how it is. Like, and these are people only a handful of generations away from going in from Judges and going in from Moses, delivering them into the promised land. They immediately start screwing around and doing this stuff. And even in Judges, which is my government of choice, that the Judges is my government of choice.
Oh, yeah.
Keep your government small, keep your government local. But even then they had problems with them getting out of line and doing this stuff. Moses coming down from Sinai. I mean, all this other stuff. There's a reason why you do not suffer the witch to live. Do not practice magic. All this isn't giving you laws to do stuff about stuff that doesn't exist. There's very real things involved, and there's very real consequences to doing them. Some people are going to fall for that, and some people are going to, for whether they're seeking power, whether they're seeking something else, some sort of temptation, it doesn't matter. They're compromised, and if they're advocating for the wrong thing, you need to be a gatekeeper about it. Like Fig, I think, was talking about that. We need to gatekeep the faith against these modernizers, because they've got the problem in the Vatican.
Oh, yeah.
And also in these independent churches. And that's one of the things that us non-denominationals are unfortunately, we fall to that as well, because we're very independent. That means that a church can get squirrely, and they can stay that way because there's no governing body out above them to say, hey, knock it off.
And the only way that this gets exposed within churches is if people have actually read the Bible and know when they're being fed a line of bullshit. Like, it's why Peter even tells us that we have to be prepared to give an answer to anyone who asks us for a reason for the hope that is in us, and to do so with all humility and grace. Because, like, here, just to give you a few instances of things that came out of the Assemblies of God church that I was a part of. Do you know what scrying is?
Yes, I know. I have a vague understanding of it, but go ahead for the chat.
Yeah, it's essentially.
I clearly know about it, so you just tell me what you know.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. We'll see where we sync up. It's essentially mindless writing. It's the same. The same goal of communication is what you get when you're playing with a Ouija board, where you're trying to reach into the aether, only you let your hand start to go. And what you're supposed to do with your countenance and mind is you're going to shut your eyes or keep them open, but you're trying to focus on nothing. You're trying to literally empty your head of all thought and reach kind of this in-between zone. I guess you could kind of call it that place just between sleep and awake. It's what's done inside meditation, especially that's what's done inside Kundalini yoga. The entire goal in doing Kundalini yoga is to get you to open up those chakra doors within inside you, which are very real. But there is also, like you were saying, there's a reason why God told us don't practice witchcraft, because yes, you can contact people that have gone on, but you are never to do so, because when you open yourself up to that, you don't know what's going to attach itself to you, because this is just a vessel. I am not a body with a soul. I am a soul that has a body. And if I'm not occupying my soul because I'm astral projecting somewhere, something else might. So scrying is one of these things that no joke. I listened to a pastor that my mom was listening to within the Assemblies of God ministry talking about, just writing every thought as it comes into your head, and, praying before you do that, and then letting that being a way of God speaking through your pen. And then, you have to take what's written, and you have to go actually and read it and, see where it lines up with the Bible. And sometimes you're given a fresh revelation that you may not see in the Bible, but, the more you do this, the better you'll get at it. that was one of the things that was real popular with some of the people in our church, sort of holy scrying. We also had the name it and claim it, which is, for those who don't know what that is, that's, you've probably heard people say, oh, speak it into existence. And that's this idea of us being able to attain to the literal vocal power of God, in where he said, let there be light, and there was. We know that God is the only one who can speak things that are not as though they were, and then it becomes so. The idea that we could speak something into existence is built entirely on the laws of attraction. It's this idea of, oh, I make my little vision board and I just say it and 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 say it enough that the universe somehow connects, and all these little dots coincide to build themselves into the singularity of a moment where I get exactly what I want. That's literally what this whole calling in your harvest and name it and claim it is all about. It is built on the laws of attraction, and that is directly tied to Taoism, to Jainism, and to Buddhism. Another fun one is this, and I'll be getting into this in a much more thorough dive, but it's the idea that, and I touched on it briefly a little bit ago. I want to say you and I actually covered this in a much heavier talk a few back, but it's the spiritual formation exercise. It's this idea that, and there's a whole process to it, but the end goal is you are supposed to essentially open the door of your soul to any kind of persuasion, because you're believing that it's supposed to be either from God or from an angel or one of his arbiters. And your entire life very much becomes that of a low level, entry level occult person who is being led by a Sherpa of sorts, a spiritual Sherpa who they will confess their sins to, who they will check with when they have a question about the Bible, instead of just reading the word themselves, who they will literally be there waiting on. That's the eventual end goal of it. And that's done through the emptying of the mind, through Lectio Divina. That's done through a repetition of a word or an anchor phrase while getting into heavy, heavy, heavy meditation. Yes, we're told to meditate on the word, but it's a very different meditation than what you see take place inside yoga or Kundalini yoga or Jainism or Taoism. And those are just three of the things that I've seen personally coming through the church. And these are all born of Eastern practices, and they're all condemned a number of times within the Bible. But the only way you know this, when you hear somebody from the pulpit or somebody within your Sunday school class start to talk about this in a favorable light, is if you've read the word. Because way too many people inside the church only get their clutch of verses on a Sunday. And if they hear the pastor come up there, this guy, maybe he's got a doctorate and he graduated from seminary and he's done crusades around the world and seen thousands, if not millions, come to Christ. And they hear him suddenly talking about opening yourself up to spiritual persuasion in the form of holy scrying or holy yoga or a spiritual formation exercises. Well, if they haven't read their word, they're going to be way too eager to grab a hold of whatever it is that he said, buy his little book from the gift stand on their way out the door, go home, and potentially damage their spiritual man and put these fetters on themselves that are not meant to be there.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's it's, dude, just when in doubt, just be a simple, do it like the song. Just be a simple kind of man. Just be a simple kind of Christian.
Yep.
Just get in the Bible. Don't mess with this any of this weird stuff. If it seems wrong, run away from it. Run away from it. And I mean the yogas, they talk about the the different prayers and the namaste and all that other stuff. It's all weird stuff. Let's go let's catch up with the chat then. Let's go through. And
Mitch there, my Ouija board has a stutter and constantly asks for a translator. Always
You
good
can
for
use
some
that.
levity.
You can use that. That translate that that sign language person on the for Joe Biden's press conferences.
Right.
How could how do you make sign language sound smarmy? That's what that's just me. That's just me. While we've said the Satanists are coming for, or Satanists are coming for Eric because his lights went out.
Yeah, I'm back in the light now.
Mitch says, I always read Satanist as statist, but that would just be me. And me too.
You're not far off there.
And me too. Underneath, I see lots of women at the store with Wick cards in response to your Wicca thing. And look, that was something that when I was in high school, or no, right out of high school, in between things, that I was interested in, because I have, I was just finding out, I have a heavy Celtic genealogy thing. I thought it was interesting, but never to the point where I need to practice it. But I was like, oh, that stuff seems pretty cool. And then, you get to that point where you wisen up and you go, oh, wait, no, this stuff is wrong.
Yep.
Most of the Satanists have infiltrated Canadian churches. Very sad. That's from Wild Weeb. Yeah, well,
very true.
Canada's not alone there.
Yep.
Australia is interesting enough. The guy whose show I went on Friday, if any of y'all followed that, the other Paul, his YouTube channel, when I was on there, one of the things he told me at the end was he lives in Australia. He went to Hillsong, the original Hillsong church, for 10 years. So I'm going to bring him on, and we're going to talk about some Hillsong. I'm going to have him for some other content too, because he's like Eric in many respects. He's very studious in the word. It's good to bring people like that on, because look at me. I'm a general idiot when it comes to this stuff. So I'm just here to talk. Fig said all these preachers are blaspheming the name of God. Yeah. Nico, holy yoga sounds like a joke. Yeah, that sounds a little weird. I know I've got friends. The idea of stretching to stay in shape is fine. It is like, just like with lifting weights, you stretch, we do it in the military and everything. But when you start getting into the spiritual aspects of yoga, like what you were talking about, because I don't know all the fancy names about it, but all that stuff, they start asking you to do different types of prayers and say different types of words and everything. That's when it gets weird. You can stretch without doing the weird stuff.
Yeah.
You can stretch. Okay. If you're doing it for exercise, know that you don't have to do yoga as they're selling it to you. Okay. Yep. You can just be very mindful of what you're doing, folks.
Yes.
Mitch says, in my experience, women are often at the forefront of trendy social fashion statements. I call it the dances with wolves phenomenon. I'd be interested to know the connotation behind that name. Mitch, I'd love you to expound on that further. Yeah, that most of the people I know, most of the time when I run across somebody who's practices Wicca, it's almost exclusively women. And it's because they think it's cool, because it's something interesting. We're the descendants of the women you didn't burn, or whatever. Nobody cares. It's edgy. It's cringe. Nobody cares. It's hipster. It's hipster religion. So, and I just got a message from one of my friends. She goes, me and my wife, she was talking about her and my wife. They when they do their yoga, they pray to God while they're doing their yoga stretches. So, she wanted me to make sure I put that out there. Nernath, how do you think you can wait, we already got that part. Oh, that's right, because I saw that and I jumped ahead. Mitch says the method I use is, he's talking to Nernath. Mitch says, I also like to paraphrase George Carlin when he spoke about the early detection and avoidance of bullshit. Yeah, well, it's common sense in many respects. Just understand if something sounds a little too weird, it's probably not right. Fig, if the sheep are not kept in check, they will start fooling around and get lost or start leading other cut sheep astray. Exactly. We are silly people, and the Old Testament shows us how silly we are and can be.
Oh, yeah.
John Smoot, he's describing modern journalism when you were talking about scrying.
It's throwing darts at a board.
And Nernath follows right behind that. Sounds like meaningless repetitions. So, yeah. And I think... Oh, Nernath. Amber Heard's friend was a witch and did magic. Oh, yeah, I remember that part of the trial.
Amber Heard, she's got some ride-alongs, guaranteed. I guarantee you she's got more than a few dark passengers.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I think that came out pretty quick. I mean, look, again, mental illness, fame, an abusive childhood. I mean, like, all the calling cards are there for someone who would be susceptible for this.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, and when you're in the Hollywood scene, I'm sure there's a whole lot of, ooh, have you checked out this trendy spiritual journey thing I'm going to go to?
Yeah.
And then the next thing you know, you're a Scientologist.
Yeah. Yelling at an ashtray.
Which she might end up being by the end when all this is
probably.
yeah. All right, so let's see. We got about a half hour, I think. So I've got another one that came up today, actually.
Let's do it.
Let me get into my bookmarks.
While you're finding that, let me just real quick.
No, I'm not going to do that one. I'm going to do another one. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So for anybody who wants to learn more about the ideas behind the Black Awakening, I encourage you to look into Anton LaVey, look into Aleister Crowley. But if you do, like, be prayed up before you go in to read some of this material. Because it's very, very dark. If you read anything from Church of the Black Goat, or if you read anything from the actual, like, the Satanic Bible, which does exist, be prayed up when you do so. I'd encourage you also, if you're wanting to know just more about the spiritual aspect and what you can be doing as a Christian or God-fearing person to wage your own spiritual warfare, which we're called to do, I would encourage you to look up Russ Disdar's website. It is still operational, and there is somebody, I don't know if it's his daughter or somebody else inside his organization that is trying to spearhead it now, but it's called Shatter the Darkness. I think it's shatterthedarkness.net, and you should be able to find his courses on there. It behooves you as a Christian or somebody who wants to learn about this to go to, like, the person who's done the most research that I've ever seen, and that would be Russ Disdar. So check those out.
Good deal. All right, Nernath bookmarks. Just keep 30 tabs open the proper internet boomer way. Well, I can boomering things, so. And no, that would irritate me. Mitch the Ripper. Okay, here's my clarification. When Dances with Wolves came out, any female that could afford a pair of moccasins and a dream catcher were suddenly 164th Blackfoot or some such because it became trendy. Yeah. So then some of them became senators in Massachusetts. So
Pocahontas.
I'm not. Yeah. All right, so I was gonna do one, and then I forgot that I had this one live, and this one's a wild one. So let me pull this one up. So Dr. Jordan B. Cooper, not to be confused with Dr. Jordan B. Peterson. Dr. Jordan B. Cooper is I think he's a Lutheran guy, but also generally has some pretty cool stuff to go to look at if you're on Twitter. Non-binary trans bishop is then removed from inclusion group in the ELCA. That's the Rainbow Lutherans, as I call them, for not being anti-racist enough. So many turns in this story and so much for everyone to be offended by. I don't know how you all even keep track. Let's get in, talk about this. So,
non-binary.
Yeah.
Trans bishop.
Stop. Don't get ahead of there. The LCA presiding bishop requests resignation of first transgender bishop. Quote, Bishop Megan Rohrer's removal of a Latino pastor on the Feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe, which is another problem, has been criticized by the Asociación de Ministerios Latinos de la ELCA as showing a, quote, lack of empathy and understanding towards their Latinx siblings.
Oh my. Oh
So
my
this
gosh.
is your bishop in a bow tie. Some people can rock a bow tie. That person cannot. Oh, is this behind? Okay, it's not behind a paywall. All right. The presiding bishop of the largest Lutheran denomination in the United States, which is a travesty, has asked its first transgender bishop to resign amid criticism over the removal of the pastor of a Hispanic congregation on the Feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe in December. In a report of the church, blah, 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 blah. Oh, Bishop Elizabeth Eaton said, you know what the problem is? You already know. Head of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America announced that she had requested Bishop Megan Rohrer's resignation from the denomination's Sierra Pacific Synod. Okay. Yeah, it's checking all the boxes here.
Oh
Eaton's
my
request
God.
comes after the SPS removed Reverend Nelson Rebel Gonzalez from his position as mission director at Misión Latina Luterana in Stockton, California on December 12th.
How did she have that power to do that?
We're talking about an offshoot of Lutheranism that has done its look. There's Elizabeth Eaton. Are you okay, so many questions here, but yeah. So when many Mexican Americans celebrate their religious and cultural identities, commemorates the day in 1531 when many Christians, particularly Catholics, believe the Virgin Mary appeared in Mexico as an indigenous man named Juan Diego. Okay. Where did it... Rebel Gonzalez call after continual communications of verbal harassment and retaliatory actions from more than a dozen victims from 2019 to present. Okay, so it sounds like we've got a sexual abuse issue. Rebel Gonzalez denied those accusations to Religious News Service, but Rohrer's actions were criticized by some group within the ELC as showing a lack of empathy and understanding towards their Latinx siblings, and led Eaton to appoint a listening team to review what happened. How much of this? Oh, I opened this wrong. I'm sorry. I didn't. Hold on.
There's a lot going on there. Holy cow.
I was reading this whole thing and I didn't have you guys following along with me.
It's okay. It's okay.
So this is Bishop Elizabeth Eaton when I was talking earlier.
Oh man.
This is Megan. Because I think they had to step. They've removed Megan. Megan's no longer a bishop, but is still probably wearing a bow tie. I do not believe that the circumstances of these unfortunate events and Bishop Rohrer's involvement in them rise to the level of formal discipline against Bishop Rohrer, Eaton said. However, I believe that Bishop Rohrer has lost the trust and confidence of many constituents, both within and without the Sierra Pacific. So to sum all this up, basically, you have a pronouns person who is in a position within the church, supposedly as a bishop, which is biblically unsound. The ELC is when we talk about rot from within, the ELCA is rotten to the core, and it's not make these. What they're doing is wrong. It's biblical. It's against biblical. It's not a Christian religion at this point, because now you're taking all the biblical instructions and throwing them out because you want to play games with identity politics, or you want to feel better about yourself.
Yep.
I don't know.
It's the yielding to the whims and wants and desires of man and being more concerned with pleasing them than pleasing God.
So we have this person. They look like they were trying to discipline a bishop of color. I guess instead of a person of color, we'll call him a bishop of color in this case, on an event that is very important to people of his ethnicity, the Latin American or the Latin community. And so then she was disciplined. She was ultimately removed. what I understand. This bookmark, this part, this
Now that the first gal was removed for, did you say sexual impropriety?
that's what it looked like. There were some reports of some sexual impropriety. They removed the Reverend Nelson Rebel Gonzalez when said it had unanimously decided to vacate Rebel Gonzalez after continual communications of verbal harassment and retaliatory not sexual, verbal harassment.
Verbal harassment.
Of more than a dozen victims from 2019 to present. So we don't know the real. I mean, look, he might have just been talking about to people about their identity.
Sure.
We don't know the circumstances. Like I said, it's a very odd part of, it's a very odd church. I don't follow it very well, except for usually when something goofy is going on within the Lutheran circles, the ELCA is in dead center of it. And so Bishop Eaton it. So look, we have politics playing a role all over the place. And that's how you know something like this is divorced from God. Because what is this? It's all everything that's going on in here has nothing to do, but it's all identity politics. All of it is identity politics. The entirety of this article and what is going on in this thing is identity politics.
Man, you know what's so wild is when you read the epistles that Paul laid out for us and that Peter laid out for us and John and James, or Yaakov, if you want to call him by his original Hebrew name. When you look at those, you see within the pages that there is also a bent on identity. And it's our identity as saints, our identity as Christ followers, our identity as the body of Christ. Within those epistles is instruction after instruction after instruction on how to live peaceably with those around you, be they Jew, Gentile, proselyte, or heathen. And a code of not just moral, but heaven-bound behavior that begets more people coming into the fold, increasing the family size, building up your community, doing good for the sake of doing good. It's literally a roadmap to fostering community, building a big old family, and enjoying life to the fullest. And nothing inside there whatsoever calls to party lines. Nothing in there whatsoever calls to your choice of whether you want to go by this pronoun or that pronoun. Nothing inside there calls to a microaggression or just how safe you feel. Nothing in there even calls to your want and desire to be happy. You know, we have in our little unalienable rights, we have life, liberty, and the right to pursue happiness. We're not even guaranteed we can be happy. We pursue happiness, sure. Nowhere even inside the Bible is that promised to us. Oh, sure, we're told that the joy of the Lord is our strength. And we know that love, joy, and peace, those are of the fruits of the Spirit. But within those epistles, we do get a recipe and a very microscopic look of who we are supposed to be. It's not this identity politics, but it's the identity of a Christ follower. And if we're supposed to be the hands and arms and the feet of Jesus, then we have to know that our actions and the words that we say have to be filtered through the lens of honest, actionable love. And if you want to know what that is, I encourage you to read through Proverbs and read through 1 Corinthians 13. You get all the characteristics of love laid out for you. There is a world of responsibility that is tied up in that word that is both a noun and a verb. And when I see crap like this taking place on the pulpit to the detriment of the ministers who either run afoul of a social group that just can't stand their guts and wants them pulled down off the pulpit, whether they run afoul of their own board of elders or the deacons, or whether they run afoul of another progressive minister. None of those actions are being done in that actionable love. None of those actions are being done with another's actual agency genuinely at the heart of it. It's making a mockery of what this human experiment and experience should be. And it flies in the face of what the simplicity of the Christian message and what the goal is. It's not just to love and be loved by anyone and everyone. It's not to have the opportunity to love and be loved. It's literally to enjoy communion with our Creator, with his collective body, and build that family as big as possible, all while hoping to live that quiet, prosperous life amiably with those who are around us, and spending as much time with family, friends, and relation as we can in genuine camaraderie, in genuine edification of each other. This crap, though, these word games you see people playing, does nothing but destroy that message and destroy that calling for so many people out there. And that's why you have these ministers getting up behind the pulpits and being all too willing to point fingers at their congregation in accusatory fashion, more or less making them out to be on the same level of the psychos who pull the trigger on these young kids in a school whenever there's a mass shooting, or some psycho drives their van up on a curb to hit a bunch of people. They're more or less comparing their own flock to those crazy people. And it does nothing but assassinate their witness for God and assassinate what the actual meaning of Christianity and Christian is, which is little Christ, those who seek to imitate their Creator.
Yeah, and if you really want to know why we feel like these episodes that we're doing are so important, the ELCA is a really good example of, if you let this kind of weird modernization and politicization of your church take control, you have a literal circus. And that's what the ELCA is. It's not anything that it's not recognizable at all with Christianity.
They don't care about the souls.
Right.
They don't care about them at all.
You can go into it if you're a mainline Christian, Baptist, Presbyterian, whatever, and you go into a Catholic church with especially a traditional Latin mass, it's going to be very odd to you.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
A lot of things are going to be weird, but everything, like the theme is still there. The same thing if you go to an Orthodox church. Same thing if you go to some of these high Protestant churches, or even a Pentecostal church sometimes, depending on the Pentecostal church. This is something else. This is a church where they're worshiping themselves and their own desires and their own identities. It's sad. It makes me angry, and it makes me sad at the same time, because you've got this is enablers at work, where you could be coaching somebody to go, yeah, I get it that you're struggling with gender dysmorphia, or sexual urges that are sinful. Let's help you work through this. Let's get you some resources. They're out there. There's out there for people. Mm-hmm. But instead they're like, no, there's nothing wrong with you. God made everybody beautiful. Okay, guess what? You're a Unitarian now. You're not a Christian. Go do whatever you want. Practice all the yoga you want. Talk about nirvana and karma, and do all the weird stuff that you want to do. Just don't bring Christ into it, because Christ is very clear. The only way into heaven is through him. And there's no getting around it. It's not through you and your multicolored scarves that you wear and all that other stuff. It's not.
Yep.
And I get it. That's why this is frustrating. This is why we do episodes on it.
Yep.
So go ahead.
Well, because it's so important for your spiritual health to recognize this. And as hard a pill as this is to swallow it, people must. Because your eternity is at stake. And I'm not saying, that you can lose your salvation. You can't lose your salvation, but you can lose the rewards that would otherwise be coming to you. James points that out to us when he talks about how there are many that will enter the kingdom, but they won't inherit the kingdom. And I hate the idea that because these church leaders are essentially playing church politics, knowing full well the sway that they have over their congregation, that so many of them, like lambs led to the cosmic slaughter, will enter in and engage with that nonsense as though that is the gospel. And in so doing, sacrifice whatever rewards and accolades are waiting for them.
Yeah. Narrow is the way, folks. All right, let's catch up. Let's catch up on some chats. That guy, Mitch, randomly got this recommended because Eric was on Ricada Law's show. Hey, well, Ricada Law was on this show. Welcome to the program, Mitch. Glad to have you here. Hope you turn in more. So this is for everybody. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. I know you regulars have already done that. Share it if you know anybody who you think would enjoy this. Social media, whatever. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram now that I've got an Instagram account. It's a Flawed Man of God. It's an easy way to find me. Eric Rolon, you can find him on YouTube. Check out his channel, Angel Legend. We'll get into that in a little bit as we're wrapping up because he's got some plans going ahead. But that guy, Mitch, glad to have you here along with Mitch the Ripper. That's great. Scroll down a little bit. MR said, I wonder what they nailed to the church door. He's talking about the ELCA Lutherans.
The maps.
Look, well, number one, they wouldn't probably. That's the thing. They're not nailing themselves up there. But you probably think that it would, instead of Martin Luther, he did not pull any punches by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah.
He was very forceful. I would imagine that the Rainbow Lutherans would be more along the lines of a strongly worded letter from the United Nations type themed thing that nobody would have taken seriously. They would have taken it down.
Yeah, and it would be even more
Catholics
anti-Semitic.
Fig Newton said, "Shut up, Meg." Talking about the past. Yes, very much. Just shut up, Meg.
Yep.
Nico boomering me. And then I scroll down too far again. Nernaeth, lies conceal everything, lies embrace everything, but not with any help from me. Alexander Solzhenitsyn. That's a good quote. Blaine's escape quarters in. I'm in late. What did I miss? You'll have to find out by watching this. Let's see. Blaine then says, isn't pursuit of property John Locke, the guy we quoted all over the Constitution? We pursue happiness. And then he says, even Episcopal is strange to my Northwest Baptist self. I don't know what Northwest Baptism is. It'd be interesting. To see. And Mar said, good talk, Mitch and Flawed. I mean, Eric. Yes, we enjoy these. We do this every other Tuesday. And we might round out this series, at least for the time being, and then talk about some other stuff kind of loosely related. I really let Eric tell me where he wants to go with these because I know that he's going to bring content that I know you all are going to appreciate. We've got other things. We started off where Eric was coming on talking about problems, plot holes, kind of basically in the Bible, places where things like what happens to Lot at the end of the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah ends on a pretty weird note. He has sex with his daughters, and I think they have kids, and then they never hear from Lot ever again. So, things like that. He did. I'd highly recommend checking out some of our early early work that we did together. He's talking about the Nephilim. That was a big thing that we got into, and the 12 tribes of Israel. Very cool stuff. And Eric has been a friend of this show and co-host occasionally for a long time. A long time as far as this channel is concerned. Where were we at with that? Too many. Mitch says too many churches themselves are practicing the sin of pride. I mean, it is. It is, and that's what I'm saying. We were talking about it in that chat earlier, Mitch, that we were all kind of involved in, about people taking advantage of church and Christianity and stuff like that. It's hard. It's hard sometimes to find a good place. That's why when you shop for a church, you're looking for what is being preached. Is it biblical? Is it based in scripture? Is it not political? And is the culture there a culture of congregational, or is it a congregational culture that's going to support you and want you to come in and be part of their group and treat you like family? Those are the two things that I want you to look out for the most. Oh, also, I advise it be an elder-led church, but that's me. But that's me. Look at those two things and then look for whatever else makes you comfortable at that point. Those are the two big things I think that if you're looking for a church, find that, and then you're less likely to be disappointed in the end. All right. When are we all going to, Fig Newton says, when are we all going to play Jackbox? I don't know what that is.
Oh, Jackbox games. Oh, we'll make it happen. We'll make it happen.
All right. Nurnath, how much do you get? How much to get you every Tuesday? Well, I'm not even super chatted yet, so I'm not even monetized. So we're
working on it.
Yeah. Blaine said Northwest Baptist is dunking believers and holding potlucks. Oh, so Southern Baptism, basically, only in the Northwest.
Yeah, just less snake handling during worship.
Yeah. And they called Game of Thrones obscene. I could have just read Sodom and Gomorrah for the themes. You really can.
Genesis 19. Total insanity.
I'm a Tolkien guy. I like Robert Jordan. I like these guys. I like this stuff. George R.R. Martin didn't impress me. There's no reread value in Game of Thrones. Once everything that's cool about Game of Thrones is shock value. You try reading through it again and you know what's going to happen. Who cares?
That's fair. That's fair.
So, Angel Legend Spring, Eric, speaking of bringing in content, Eric, your last content was 5 months ago. Where's the content on your channel?
I know. Don't worry, it's coming.
We're talking about it. He shared some of these ideas with me, and I'm telling him I'm very, very supportive of it. I think he needs to go pursue it. So, all right. So let's wrap up because we're getting close to 2 hours, and now things will be easier, I think, for me and Eric because we're both on the same time zone now, so it's easier.
Yes.
So looking forward to this. Looking forward to the rest of the week. So Wednesday, Thursday, and probably Friday, we'll probably be doing Bible read-throughs, unless just because Friday's probably going to be a short stream. You've seen Mitch the Ripper, his show, Ridgedale Brand. That's his channel. I'll probably be on that with Eric. That's what we were talking about earlier. Be on there to talk about the 10 Commandments and their value to in a secular society. I have opinions. I have opinions. They should all be Christian, but I have opinions. So we'll be on there. That'll be at 10 o'clock my time, which makes it very easy for me to get on there and have and you know the kids will be asleep by then. They better be anyway. And we'll go from there. So we'll probably continue doing the biblical readings. Again, thank you everybody who's shown up for this chat.
Serious.
And come in. It's a big difference from what we've had in the past. Eric is, like I said, it's been a month and a half almost.
Yep, you guys are awesome.
Yes. And so that's our look ahead. I'm trying to get Protestia, somebody from Protestia on to talk about what's going on with the Southern Baptist Convention, because they're having everything apparently got wild today. They were having elections, pastoral elections, and things were going. They even apparently had a vote about women pastors, which would have been ridiculous revelation if they okayed that. But apparently that might have been an overstatement of what they were voting on. It had to do more with clarification of women's roles in and we've had to do that within our own
Sure.
small church, is just say, hey, look, we do have women who can step up and do leadership with other women, or might be able to help out with a ministry or something like that. We don't want to be unbiblical about it. So we're big.
Yeah.
We've been trying to figure out the best way for that. So I've been trying to get somebody to talk about that. Again, still trying to get somebody to come on and talk about the Methodist Church split, because that's very interesting content. And I've got a couple of other, like I said, the other Paul, I want to bring him on. He had a guest on who I was talking about, who's big into the paranormal. I'm going to get him and probably send him over to Eric and see if I can't get those two working on stuff together. But with paranormal stuff, I think that's really cool stuff that we can all just enjoy, whether you buy into it 100% or not. Like I said, the supernatural exists, at least in some format. I mean, God's there. So whether you believe in X, Y, or Z happened, I don't think that's going to determine your salvation at all. But it is an interesting thing to get into. So again, so Eric, talk about do you have anything to say about your channel and the content coming?
Yeah. So I haven't quite had the time since we've done this tremendous move, clear. Is it across America if it's vertically?
Cut it in half, basically.
Yeah, since we've bifurcated America to get up to New York. And so moving into this new season, I'm adding a little section to my channel that's going to be called Power Encounters. I've been doing a lot more research into the supernatural, into the worlds of demons and demonology and spiritual warfare as a whole. And it was interesting. This was actually born. I watch a couple of guys on YouTube that they read people's emails and encounters with Sasquatch or Bigfoot. And it was very cool to see the community of people that will be willing to share their little stories of what happens or what they think happened. And I know that given the nature of this reality that we live in, there are more people out there than you can probably shake a stick at that have had their own encounters with something supernatural, and they may not have been able to put their finger on the pulse of what it was. And so I'm going to be kind of pulling the community to have them send me some of their stories, some of their events as they took place. And I'm going to do a dissection of some of these and see if we can get to the bottom of what was actually going on. That'll all come on the heels of a bit of a deep dive that I'm going to be posting here in short order that is going to have to do all with biblical demons, biblical angels, Nephilim, angel-human hybrids, and the beasts in the throne room of God. So it's going to be a real supernatural spin, but there should be something in there for everybody.
Excellent. And like I said, Eric's got great content. He does research on things. He backs up as much as he can say with biblical or some sort of research that he's done.
Absolutely.
All right, guys. Well, like I said, I'm glad to have all you here. This has been a very hopping chat tonight. I'm glad y'all enjoy the guest, Eric. I know some people were talking. Look, Eric, you were missed in the homeschooling episode. People were saying, "Where's Eric? Where's Eric? He's supposed to be here." I said, "Hey, Eric don't care about y'all." No, I'm just playing. Eric's awesome. So, but with that said, we're gonna go ahead and close it down for the night, and you guys keep watching and keep those chats coming in. Keep that content rolling in. It's great.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And with that said, everybody have a very good evening, good night, and God bless.
God bless.
Woo.